David and Nate, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you here. Just to provide a little bit of context for the listeners, David and Nate are both real estate investors and also run a podcast called Your Financial Pharmacist. And it's the real estate side of that podcast. There's sort of the general financial information side, and then there's the real estate investing side, which is the newer side, which it's really interesting. I listened to a couple episodes, and you guys do a great job. They specifically help people who are in the pharmacy profession get to financial freedom through real estate investing. And I know that's a industry where there can be a lot of student loan debt, and it's a very consuming industry, which is also why we're recording this in the evening, because you guys got consuming 9-to-5 jobs.
That's right.
But I think, even though there's probably not a ton of pharmacists who are in the audience, in my particular audience, I think the concepts you teach have a lot of applicability to other professions. So I appreciate you guys coming on, and I'd love to hear a little bit about you guys' backgrounds and how you got into first, how you became a pharmacist, and then why the transition into real estate investing once you did.
Yeah, I again appreciate you having us on, Kirby. It's awesome to be here. And I agree. There's a lot of relatability between pharmacists and kind of the work of the 9-to-5 and trying to get into real estate investing as well. And so if we go back to when I got started into pharmacy, I went to college, and like most people, had no idea what I wanted to do. I think I started off engineering and then pre-med, and I flip-flopped like 5 different times. But again, started learning about some of the career fields out there, and just found a great niche in pharmacy because it allowed me to be an expert at one thing and focus on really kind of fixing problems along the way. And so that was a great fit for me. Graduated pharmacy school, did a residency here in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm located. And again, was on the full clinical track for several years, doing very intense clinical work. And my wife got pregnant with our first daughter, and we went off on like a last trip. And I was like, I'm finally going to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad before I have kids and have no time for books anymore. And just like caught this bug of, man, I can do something else besides just pharmacy for the rest of my life. I love pharmacy, but I don't want that to be the only thing. And so had more conversations with my father-in-law, who's in real estate, and others in the industry. And then when I should have been going to get my board certification and taking on more licensure, I went and got my real estate license instead. And so started working as a real estate licensee and as an agent, and just really liked the real estate investing space and just fell in love with that concept. So helped others in that niche, and then started expanding it to myself and got into real estate investing myself back in 2019.
Got it. Okay. And David?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a different story. I got started a little earlier. I was a technician in a drugstore when I was 16. So I just fell in love with that drugstore world, seeing the same patients week in, week out, where you get to develop that relationship and help them. And so I just really enjoyed that. I went off to pharmacy school, continued working in drugstores and just enjoyed that, did a residency. And then at the earlier part of my career than I had thought might be the case, I had an opportunity to get into teaching, which is also what I really enjoy. So I'm a professor and really enjoy teaching about drugstore practice and that. One of the things about working in academia is it's not as entrepreneurial and things like that. So I do enjoy then getting to kind of as a hobby in the evenings and weekends work on real estate investing. And so it's been just a fun kind of outlet there, and also a way to diversify some of the financial plan, and then also create a little bit of extra income for the family, and those just kind of memory making experiences that we all want to bring to the family.
Got it. Yeah, David, when most people say they fell in love with drugs at 16, that means something very different. So
very different. Yes.
Yeah, it's unique for you. So looking back, you guys have, pretty secure jobs. And I think many in this audience kind of fall in this category where they're working jobs, but they realize that they want more financially than their job is going to provide. So I think many people have the inclination to leave their job and pursue it full time. That's not what you guys did. And it sounds like that's not what you teach other people to do either. So what what steps, I guess, do you recommend people take when they start, thinking about, like, if they're working a full-time job and they want to start doing this, like, what are some of those, the first steps that you would recommend someone take to get into real estate?
I think one of the traps that a lot of people fall into is they feel like it has to be all or nothing. I see this a lot on like Bigger Pockets and some of the big investing platforms, right? I either have a W-2 job or I'm a real estate investor, and those are the only tracks. And what we try to advocate for a lot of times is that if you love your profession, but you want to diversify, there's nothing wrong with that. And like we try to provide ways to do that. And so whether you're on the spectrum of, I just want to buy, REITs, or all the way down to like, I want to be a landlord and buy my own properties, and everywhere in between, we're trying to create that. Here's the next step that you can take to see what's going to be a good fit for you and your own career path. Because there's absolutely going to be people that jump in and realize halfway down the road that they do want to jump ship and they do want to leave their careers. But again, the goal shouldn't be to just pick one and only follow that path. We're trying to create ways to do more than one thing.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about a lot is defining your goals. And so if you set out a goal of, I just want some diversification in my financial plan, and I want to do that through real estate investing, then like Nate said, that doesn't necessarily require you to quit your job. Particularly if you can leverage the skill set and strengths of others. One of the things in the pharmacy space and in healthcare in general is healthcare is very much a team sport, right? Doctors, nurses, pharmacists, everybody's all working together for the good of the patient. And so in our day jobs, we're used to working in that team environment. So working with contractors and real estate agents and property managers, by hiring out people that do amazing work, you can put together that product and do it in a way that's relatively passive. I know a few things about being a pharmacist. I know very little about being a contractor. I'm not good at swinging a hammer. I'm not good at doing much of that, but I've had the good fortune of working with some great contractors and great realtors, and that's made that possible because I set out that my goal was not to leave my day job, as many real estate folks call it, right? Like my goal was not to do that. My goal was just to find some financial diversification.
And so what we advocate for a lot is that first step is education, right? Just like we do in pharmacy school, just like anybody does in any careers, start with that education side. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into and know your options before taking that leap. I think it's really easy. Again, people hear about real estate and they think it's like this get rich quick scheme where you just do it and then in 5 years you get to live on a beach. But if you actually go and educate yourself about the ways that you can get involved in real estate, you'll realize that there's a lot different paths out there and a lot more safe. Again, we're safety oriented, boring pharmacists. Like that's how you can follow this. And so we focus a lot on that and educating yourself first before taking those first steps.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I've noticed that I say this a lot, not all deals are created equal. Like, and I think the perception for a lot of people getting into real estate is that, a deal is a deal. Like as long as it makes me money, then it's something I should go after. And so, but they some deals fit into your lifestyle much better than others. And so for you guys as pharmacists, like, and having a very full-time job, what types of deals have you done? What types of deals do you pursue? What fit into your lifestyle that you're after in your goals?
Yeah, so for me, it's mostly buy and hold and then BRRRR properties. I can use contractors to help facilitate the rehabs and things like that. It's not me in there hanging drywall or anything crazy. But again, the buy and holds are a really good fit for me because I can do as much or as little management as I want, right? So my very first property that I bought, I wanted to manage it. I wanted to understand that process. Again, nerdy pharmacist. I want to like dissect it from the inside out. So I wanted to understand what that property management looked like from the inside so I could go hire it out for going forward. I actually still manage that property today because I like doing that one property, but everything else is under a property manager because I don't have time to do more than that. And so that's how I've approached those deals.
Yeah, and same kind of thing here. Those long-term rentals, just as I was looking around the landscape of things that were out there, as far as the intersection of easy to get started and relatively passive, the long-term rental game felt like the best first step. And even for me, again, like Nate said, we're safety-oriented, risk-averse people by trade, right? And so for me, it was easiest, rather than even going out and buying a property, it was easiest just to, when we moved, just naturally same town, just one house to another, we just kept our old house and test drove that as a rental. And that just made it really simple to get started, hiring a property manager and trying it out. Even if the metrics weren't amazing, like you said, not all deals are created equal. For me, I wanted simple way to get started and to kind of prove to myself that this could be done passively, because the biggest goal for me was to make sure that it just didn't eat away at all my free time in order to be a real estate investor.
Got it. That makes sense. And in terms of deals that you pursue now, based on maybe some lessons learned that you've had along the way, I know, the deals that I used to pursue, I look back and I'm like, that was painful. Like, it seemed like on paper it sketched out, but then once you take into account your time and all the other factors that went into it, risk factors and that sort of thing, the deals that I pursue now are very different. So what makes a deal for you? Like, what do you recommend to people, in terms of like if the ideal deal that you're targeting right now?
Yeah. So for me, when I started off, the very first property we bought was a buy and hold with 25% down conventional loan. And that was great because, again, like David said, it was easy to jump in and it felt very safe. The problem was we spent all this money on this great house and we got it rented. We had it cash flowing. We felt like we knew what we were doing. And then we had no money left. And it was like, great, okay, $0 in the bank. How do we go get the next one? And so the biggest shift for me has been moving away from, and not completely away from, but at least in some respects, moving away from the buy and holds where I need to put in that 25% and then just that's it, and trying to look for those value add properties. So burring, something where I can go in and actually create equity and then refinance it to get that capital back out. Because one of the things I don't want to be doing is working just to feed the real estate investment beast. Like, it should be feeding itself. And so that big shift for me from the beginning to where I'm at now has been that transition toward properties that need a little bit more work, because I feel like we have the experience now to do that. And have a good partner like David to help me out. And that allows us to kind of take on different properties than we could at the very beginning.
Yeah. And for me, I think, as we mentioned, this kind of safety oriented, risk averse nature of how we're wired as pharmacists, right? One of the things that I look for in an ideal deal is multiple exit strategies. I tend to focus on single family properties that fit as either a rental property or a flip, and where they generally are marketed towards first time home buyers, kind of more that entry level price point in a market. Because those seem like, at least right now, kind of looking around my local market, huge demand in that space. So for me, that's kind of that ARV of 80 to 200. And I know, like, there's probably someone out in LA that just like crashed their car, right? Because like those prices don't exist there, but we're all in the Midwest. And so the kind of that 80 to 200 ARV, something that when you put a 30-year mortgage on it, it'll cash flow. And so I'm looking at something that could be a rental, it could be a flip. And at the end of the rehab project, I love the ones where it's just a real head scratcher of like, do we sell this or do we keep this? Because that means that it worked in both directions, hopefully.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the other thing about those type of deals is the buyer pool is so huge. That was something I underestimated when I was doing flips. Is like, on a spreadsheet, if you make the same percentage return on $1 million house as opposed to a $200,000 house, it's a much bigger number. But then you have to take into account how many $1 million buyers are out there, and how picky are those $1 million buyers. And then the refrigerator that you put into $1 million house might cost 10 times as much as a refrigerator. It's not like double the amount. So there's a lot more factors that go into it when you get into higher end deals. So I think that's a super smart strategy, is to start in that bread and butter price point where it's extremely affordable for most of the population out there that's buying houses. So that's great. What I'm curious to hear, I think it's you learn the best sometimes from your most challenging experiences. So I'd love to hear about, the most challenging deal that each of you have done, and maybe one of the biggest lessons that you took away from that time.
Yeah, I think my most challenging deal was probably my first first flip I ever did, where there's actual like rehab to be done. And we actually, this is funny because David and I kind of worked together on that deal. He helped me out. It was more local to him, so he was my boots on the ground. And everything that could have gone wrong with that property pretty much went wrong with that property. We had
Because of David?
yeah, mostly
Yeah.
because of David. Yeah,
Mostly
absolutely.
because of me. Yeah.
Wow, man, throw him under the
No,
bus.
it was really funny. We got this place and there was so much trash and stuff inside of it that we didn't even know how bad the walls were until we got the trash out. And then it was flea problems, and like every problem just kept stacking on top of each other. And every time we solved one thing, it was like, oh, we just found this other problem. And again, it all worked out in the end. It was fine. But then we got to like the finish line and I was like, okay, the deal is done. Like now it's time for the refi. And then the first appraisal we got was super low, like way like 20% under what we were expecting. I'm like, I'm terrible at this. Like, why am I doing anything in real estate investing? This is awful. But again, we went back to the appraiser. We got it reassessed. Like the numbers worked out. I think we only left like, I don't know, maybe $5,000 or $6,000 in that deal. It was almost
Wow.
again, like almost a perfect burr, all said and done.
Yeah.
But it just felt like it was a slog to get there. And I think the big things we learned along the way were just, again, expect the unexpected. And we had built in costs for that. We knew that was going to happen. But I think in my head, when again, David was like, we should build in $8,000 for this, whatever might happen. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to count that in my pocket. Like that's going to be I'm going to have that. And then we're spending 10. So, for me, it was really eye opening to see, like, you really have to have that contingency fund. You can't hope the numbers work out perfect. You have to plan for them to work out terribly and make that still be all right. And so that's really shifted our focus in terms of, again, when we look at a property, we're building in a lot of those contingencies so that if everything goes wrong again, we're still going to be okay. And that's been an approach for us. I'd rather not have a deal that's going to be close if I know that I can get something else out there that's going to be safer.
Makes sense.
Yeah. There's a picture that I'm sure exists somewhere of like where a section of wall was missing and someone just put a cardboard box and like taped it to the wall, but you couldn't even see that because there was such a big pile of trash and like it was just like one of those. So yeah,
Wow.
that one was a doozy. One of the other doozies I can think of is there was a duplex that we bought, and it was before I really had an appreciation for what's a weird house. And I've since then, this has created like a don't buy weird houses rule, because some properties are just like, however they were like chopped up Frankenstein style, like they just don't make sense how someone converted it from a whatever to that duplex. And the flow was bad. Like everything was just, it was just a tough house, and it was a little bit more of a rehab than we could really do at the time. I ended up selling it at a loss to another investor who did roll up his sleeves, and at the end of it, I was like, I should have done that. I looked at the pictures and it was so good at the end. And so like, I saw like it was achievable for someone who had the vision. And so they made it work, but it was kind of more than I could chew at that time. And just that kind of awkward layout. And they were just challenges that I wasn't really prepared to face at that point. This was a early point of what I was doing, and just more than I could chew. And so I think that sometimes that just kind of knowing your limitations and not just saying like you said, on a spreadsheet, I can make this work because there's numbers, and especially as pharmacists, we enjoy getting nerdy with a spreadsheet, right? But there's some reality of what has to go into that you really need to count that cost and understand.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, especially in the beginning. There's these properties that you'll find on the MLS that have been listed for like 90 days. And, you're like, oh man, everyone's passing by this gem for some reason. And it's exactly what you said. Like, it's got this weird layout. You got to walk through 3 bedrooms to get to a bathroom. And, and there's no way to change it, or it's like built on this lot that, you have all these restrictions. And, I always tell people, especially if you're flipping, you're selling someone their dream house, no matter what price point it's at. That person is, if they're buying something that's fully rehabbed, that, they're investing what they can afford into their dream house. And so, if you've got some big issue that you can't solve with the rehab, that's probably going to be a big problem when you try to sell someone their dream house with that issue. So it's such a great lesson. I appreciate that. So what I love asking people as their journey progresses, how their goals evolve. Because I've noticed I've had people on this show who are in all different stages of of real estate investing. And I've noticed that your initial, what you think is possible or what your initial goals are tend to change a lot as you go along. And, and I guess it's a double-edged sword, because you start to find where you're not satisfied with what you initially set out to do. And so you set loftier goals. But how have your guys' goals? I mean, I guess, what did you start with? What was the plan when you first started? And now what does it look like for you?
Yeah, I think for us, you're totally right, Kirby, because it started off with just let's get a property, let's get something under our belts, let's have one and done. That way we can feel like we can call ourselves real estate investors, right? That was like hurdle number one. Then hurdle number two was, okay, well, how can we do this in a repeatable fashion? How do we create a system that allows us to continue to do this? And again, that became the Burr method for us, finding ways to rehab and recycle the money. I think the next goal is to how to take that and expedite our velocity of money, right? Rather than just, okay, we have enough to do one deal and we have to wait the 6 months to rehab that and then get rolling. And like, we can only really do one, maybe two deals at a time right now. I think the goal for us next is to be able to increase that velocity of money for me, so that we can keep doing more deals at a time. So that, I mean, there's been stuff that's come along that I have to throw to David and say like, hey, can you take this one? Because we saw this come up and there's no bandwidth for us to handle it. And so I'd like to get to a point where that velocity has improved and we can do more deals.
Yeah, I think for me, I started out with this thought of like, I need a property that has a simple enough rehab that I can go in and do it. And I can, like I said, I'm not good at swinging a hammer. I can do very little. Like, I'm 6'5", so I can reach up and paint. Like, I can do that without getting on a chair. So I'm fast at painting. It doesn't necessarily look good, but I'm fast at doing it. So like I was looking for properties that I could go in and do myself. And then I realized, if that's all I do, like, that's going to take forever. I'm going to lose all my nights and weekends, and I'm going to not see my family. And that's not really a win. So whereas initially I thought, well, if I could get one or two rentals, put them on a 30-year mortgage, 30 years later, look up and have a couple paid off properties, like, that could really change what retirement looks like. And that was kind of exciting at first. But then as I looked at what that takes out of me, I thought my goals shifted to, I need to build this as a business where I am finding a deal where it makes sense to hire people to do the work. It makes sense to hire a property manager to do the management. It makes sense to hire a realtor to help buy the next house. And it makes sense to hire a project manager at some point to manage the whole thing. And so that became the shift of, can I turn this into a more of a business where I'm managing managers and just having a lot more success that way from a time standpoint.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And along those lines, then, is there something specific that you changed that you feel like was sort of the impetus for, a much better system going forward? Or, is there anything tactically that you can point to that you feel like in the beginning, this just didn't make sense, this wasn't working, and it's like a breath of fresh air now that I figured this out, it's going so much smoother for me, for both your businesses?
I think for me, it was how I evaluated properties. We were pretty spastic at the beginning. It was kind of like, okay, grab this property, it just came on the market, let's evaluate the rents over here and call the insurance over. Like, it was 30,000 things. It felt like we didn't have a flow for how that was going to work. Now a property comes up and like, my wife sees it in the morning and it's like, hey, this one's going to cash flow. Like, should we look at this one? And I mean, we can kind of figure that out because we've built the systems and we know the markets that we're looking at, so that we're not making all those crazy decisions, right? So the big shift for us was knowing what our targets were in terms of, this is the market that we're going to look at. These are the cash flow numbers we have to see. This is the cash on cash we have to be evaluating for. And we can kind of see those properties come up quickly. And that has just created a lot less craziness for us. We're not evaluating 40 deals a week. I'm looking at 100 and I know that 3 of them are going to be worth actually diving into the real numbers on. And that's made our life a lot easier.
And I think for me, maybe that tactical change that I found was with our first property. I had this assumption, and this, like, looking back on it, super arrogant and stupid assumption that like I would be the one that would care the most about my property, and therefore I would do well at whatever. So I thought that as a property manager, I could do the best. And what I quickly found is that I didn't have enough time to do that effectively with the job that I had. I couldn't be answering phone calls. And so I tried to market this property, and I remember the numbers clearly. I was trying to get $11.50 a month, and I just couldn't do it. I went for like a few weeks. We met with some, like, it just didn't work. I wasn't good at it. And so when we finally surrendered to hiring a property manager, we vetted a few different property managers. We hired one. That property manager came in and charged $1,300. They got it right away, and they took 10%. So they took 130 off the top. My net was 1170. And so I got paid more to not do the work than I was hoping to get paid, but I couldn't even do it by doing all the work. So like that unlocked to me this, like the change of, maybe there are people that can do a better job than me that's never done this before. Like maybe there's a better way to do this. And by finding those people and hiring those people, that made that shift in my mind, that one tactic shifted in my mind of, well, if you can hire someone and the business works better, who else can you hire? Who else can you hire? And just kind of shifting a mindset that way.
Man, both of those are gold. I mean, the acquisitions process, I think, is, can be the highest paid, the highest paying part of the process. And so if you can speed that up, eliminate all the, like you said, 97% of the garbage out there that, just isn't, you have no business going after. It's like some, retail homeowner that wants to sell their house, and you're going to try to talk them down $100,000 for some reason. Like, let's eliminate those and like focus on like distress situations where we can help and come up with a solution, and focus on those 3 properties out of the 100. And then the other one, hiring, it's just, that's so key. I mean, exactly what you just said. It's like, if you can get someone who's great, and I've had some bad ones and said, I'm never going to hire somebody else. I'm just going to do it all myself. And then once you come out, like my team now is amazing, and I know each one of them is so much better at their job than I would be. So that's, you just got to get past that mindset and get past some of the, I think once you have the pain of having a bad team member, it's so easy to fall in that trap. So such great advice. I want to hear a little bit more about your financial pharmacist. That's what it is, right?
Yep.
I was going to say your pharmacist, your financial pharmacist, and all that it offers, because I know it's not just a podcast, and I know it's relatable to a lot of different industries. Some great content there. I was looking at the website. There's several books that you guys have on your podcast, or that you have on your website. Can you share a little bit more about the platform and what you guys do?
Yeah. So this was actually founded by Tim Ulbrich and co-founded by Tim Baker, two individuals. Tim Ulbrich is actually a pharmacist like ourselves. Tim Baker was in the financial planning industry for years. And when Tim Ulbrich, and like many of us, graduated from pharmacy school, he had over $200,000 in student loan debt. And the average right now for a graduating pharmacist, I think, is like $175,000 in student loan debt. Just insurmountable for most people to deal with. And even though our salaries are great when we come out the door, right? Most people make in the 6 figures. It's still just crushing amounts of debt to deal with. And so there was a lot of not misinformation, but just lacking information about, what do I do with this? How do I take what is a great salary and a great career and not let this student loan debt just completely cripple me? And so it was born from that idea that we could be out there educating people about their finances, something that we don't learn in pharmacy school, something we didn't learn pre-pharmacy school, and just giving them options. And then as that has taken off, again, I think Tim started that back in like 2016 or 2017. And as that's taken off, we started adding more arms to it. And again, we became kind of the real estate arm of that company, because as those people get out of debt or want to buy their first house or want to start investing in real estate, we're that resource to kind of talk through that side. So the whole platform is really dedicated toward, can we create financial independence for the pharmacy community? And even though that's a niche within a niche, right? Finances within pharmacy niche, there's just a huge community out there looking for that resource. And so we're trying to fill that gap for them and provide that outlet.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Well, and I think, like you said too, it fits within our niche of someone that graduates with a lot of student loan debt. But I think that just like you mentioned, there's a lot of other people out there that in careers today with how tuition is looking and debt is looking for college graduates, that I don't think pharmacists are alone in that. And so I think that there's a lot of people that are looking for a way to get goal oriented about a debt repayment strategy and a financial planning strategy. And so hopefully that impacts more than just pharmacists as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's what I was going to say too, is I think it's so relatable to a lot of people out there. Even some who, don't go through a profession where they're coming out making six figures, they still have that type of debt. And I think it can be easy to fall into that victim trap where you're like, hope is all lost, but I love to hear that there's resources out there like this, because I've seen so many people be able to overcome that using real estate, or I know there's lots of other methods that are taught on the podcast as well. But I mean, obviously I'm partial to real estate, but
us too.
Yeah. Hope is not lost. So if you're listening to this and, you've got some student loan debt, you want some more resources on strategies to overcome that, I definitely recommend checking out the website. Is that the best place to get a hold of you guys too? I mean, if somebody wanted to reach out with questions or anything?
Yeah, if you head over to yourfinancialpharmacist.com, or actually if you head over to yfprealestate.com, both of those are great places to go. So if you're looking for kind of the general financial advice, yourfinancialpharmacist.com. And if you want to get to David and myself on the real estate side, yfprealestate.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Really, really great advice. You can tell, it's hard won advice through experience. And so I really appreciate you guys sharing this. I know the community is really going to benefit from it.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Great conversation. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, guys.
You too.